Hello, welcome everyone back to another episode of Energy Unleashed with Suzanne and Kim. Hello, Kimmy.
Well, hello, Suzanne.
I like your shimmer look today.
It's shimmery. It was a holiday shirt.
Yeah, it looks fancy. This is going to be an interesting little kind of client experience that I had the other day that was so different. It kind of threw me for a loop. I don't get thrown for a loop very often being an energy worker because I pretty much can get the information quickly and figure out what I'm doing when I go into a situation, when they're on the table getting their healing. This one, Kim, is the first time in a long time where I was sort of stumped. So let me give you the setup. Got
Okay.
this gal. Known her for quite some time. And oddly enough, this has not come up on her until now. And I've known her for quite some time and done a good amount of healings on her. She has always been struggling in her life with this sense of like loneliness. She's now retired, but she was a very successful professional. She had kids, she's got grandkids, now divorced, and has a great life in so many ways, but always kind of a sadness about her. Never really felt like she found her person. A lot of people say that kind of thing.
Mhm.
I think Hallmark did that to everyone. That's a side note, but whatever. Yeah, so just really kind of had a sadness to her, very driven, very lots of male energy runs through her, even though she's a female, we have both, but she's very male energy driven, et cetera, et cetera. So lots of times she will go through these depressive states and
Mm.
just feels like things are hovering around her and can't really move forward. Lots of feelings of stuck. And I get this a lot right now. I love when people come in and say, I just feel stuck.
Mhm.
And I don't really know what that means because I don't really ever feel stuck.
Well, I
Do you,
think it means something
do you feel
different for a
stuck?
lot of people, but I've been there where the word stuck comes out of my mouth. But I feel like I'm in Groundhog Day. Like it just things don't nothing like I'm not connecting necessarily to nature like I usually do. I'm just not things aren't moving in a direction one way or the other that is making a difference in my life. You know what I
I
mean?
think I felt that. I don't equate the word stuck, maybe, but maybe that's what it is.
Yeah,
That's
it's like you're standing there at the crossroads of something, but you don't even know what the options are. You're
okay.
just standing there. Like,
Okay.
what
And a
what now?
lot of people in Minnesota seem to say they also have seasonal disorder, which I also
Oh,
have.
yeah. Like especially if we go through long periods of time without sunshine.
Yeah.
Plus you're not getting outside like you normally do.
Do
You
you do
know.
that?
I am affected by the sunshine greatly.
Are
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, I get really tired when there's not a lot of sunshine. I think I miss the vitamin D significantly.
Okay.
Like just going outside in the freezing weather and looking at the sun for just a little bit, it's like, okay, I'm good now. I
Hmm.
can keep moving. So yeah,
Yeah,
I
that's another one. I don't really feel I get affected by that. It
oh,
just
I
it,
could never live in Portland or Seattle. No way.
whereas all the time, yeah. I guess where I couldn't live is where my one of my sisters lives in Alaska, where there's like no sun. I mean, for
Yeah,
half
you
of the
for
year.
total darkness for how long?
Yeah, it's like how long are you going to be in the kind of dusky dark? Ew, that one I could get a little crazy on, but
Yeah.
yeah, this feeling of stuck for her oftentimes too goes along with like a sense of depression, and she does admit she's had depression for quite some time, and I think she takes care of it with, meds or whatever. So it's not like she's in this deep dark depression, but it's always this hovering sense of kind of ominous. Okay.
Mhm.
So she was in here doing some other things. I think it was probably post-political crap going on. I had a lot of people in my
A
house.
lot of people were scrambling to your office at that point, weren't they?
Yeah, before the election and right after the election was a lot. So, yeah, she was really just struggling with a lot of that stuff. And I loved talking with her and very many clients that same week or two about, we're in that point right now where we're dealing with agitation. And that's what this whole bigger cosmic thing is about, the agitation process, the breakdown process. So she was taking this really well, and we were having a really pretty great conversational part of the actual healing. And yet she just kept having this sense of, loneliness, but for what? And I think that's an interesting thing. A lot of people, oftentimes I'm going to jump over. Starseeds oftentimes have a loneliness. A galactic being more like me have a loneliness to go home somewhere, but we don't know where home is because we're already home and we get confused.
Mhm.
And maybe a galactic is thinking of their other home, their starseed home, their soul's home, et cetera, et cetera. Or even in between lives, if you're really a galactic that does a lot more work on the other sides of the veil, you understand that's home. So there is that sense, but she doesn't really pull tons of galactics. So again, she was having this kind of like sad family-ish. I don't feel supported and loved. I'm not really comfortable with the home thing. It was just this jumble of experiences and emotions. So I get her on the table, and I was not expecting this at all. When I work on a body, we have our meat and bone body here, and then we have our chakras that run down our spine, and we have a whole series of podcasts on our chakras, by the way. You can look those up if you don't understand that.
Mhm.
Each chakra aligns to a layer of your aura and your aura and your aura and your aura. So when you are starting to go from an embryo and growing into the fetus, each of those chakras are ignited starting in month 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. And when you are doing that, your auric field is in conjunction with one chakra down here has a close one. As the chakras go up, the fields go out. So they hold the fuel. Okay. It looks kind of like a jawbreaker when you break it open, right? So that's kind of what we're dealing with here. So I'm going into her chakras, I'm going into her field, and all of a sudden I'm like, wow. And at first, I thought that's so interesting because I can see in my head and I can see with my eyes open sometimes, and I could see a depth of energy surrounding her left hand side. And it wasn't just on her shoulder, it was along the side of the bed. And with my actual eyeballs, I could see the density of the energy moving. But when I went in, it was like this really strong presence. And I'm like, oh, wow, cool. It's her guardian angel. That's so interesting. And she is going through a lot of changes and transitions. Oftentimes, our guardian angel for me as a hospice worker and so on will come in when I see the body going through transition and transmutation. I'll see them over the left hand side. That's how Suzanne sees them. It doesn't mean that everybody does. But as the person will go closer and closer to death, the guardian angel will get bigger and bigger and more present. And so, do you ever feel your guardian angel?
Oh, yeah. There are definitely experiences, but I call them in a lot. So there is an energy that comes along with that that is very comforting for me. Loving.
Okay.
I don't know how to
And
explain
can
it.
you designate, I have you on the spot today, can you designate the frequency of your guardian versus other benevolent helpers?
Uh, I don't know that I do that. I don't think so. I do like I feel like there's a energy with me that's different than connecting with my higher self.
Okay.
So yeah, I guess so. And
Yes.
then bringing in or calling in guardian angels is different.
Right.
That's a
So can you
different feeling.
explain to people that are listening if they've never done that? What does that feeling feel like for you of the guardian angel being there, being present?
Oh, I feel like at times of like decision making or feeling uncomfortable or whatever that is, I feel like there's like a support energy or something along
Okay.
with my discernment and whatever I'm doing. Um, yeah, it's kind of it's so hard to explain.
But what does it feel like? Because that support is not a feel. So what does it feel? Does it feel like a density? Does it feel like a push? What does it feel like for Kim?
It feels a little lighter than that for me. I think it
Ah,
feels like a just like a feathery
okay.
feel.
Okay.
It's
And I
it's not
think we're
like a
backwards on
like
the
a,
screen, but I think you're doing your right hand side. Does it have a side for you?
I think it's the side, my right hand side.
Yeah, okay. And
Yeah,
again, I don't think that there's a right or wrong to this. I'm just aware when I pull it in and look at people, I find it on the left, but I don't think that's semantics. I don't think it matters.
yeah.
So again, you feel the presence of your so-called guardian. Now, for somebody that questions what is a guardian angel, in my opinion, again, take what resonates always. I believe whenever I work with someone, especially in the death process, their guardian angel comes in. I always see their guardian angel come in. And I see it come in stronger and stronger and stronger as it moves closer and closer to the light, right? And so the guardian, in my understanding, is not, it's not like, oh, grandma died. She's my guardian angel. That's kind of just uh, that's kind of like a happy little thought that grandma's your guardian angel. A guardian angel is a benevolent being that is actually there for each one of us as an individual soul through our lifetimes. And it travels from incarnation to incarnation and in between lifetimes as well. And this is important for us to understand because the guardian also is aware of the frequencies of who we are and where we're going and what we've been. And so when we think about going in between lives, that guardian is taking me into the so-called light and is with me in between lives and is participatory in what I'm doing for that next life and then comes back with me again in some shape or form. And if I'm simultaneous in my understanding, that's also a fractalization of the same kind of an essence. So these are guardians that are really on task for us as individuals. And it's really important to understand that because a lot of people have a hard time. Oh, so and so died all by himself or herself. It's horrible they died alone. We do not die alone. We do not die alone, ever die alone in terms of energetics and support systems. And know that because the guardian is there. The guardian angel is also the only benevolent being that, in our understanding on this planet, that can intervene because they can step in. They are the ones that can step in and do something that can assist you in terms of if your life is at jeopardy and it's not your time for your contract, etc. Okay. They are the only ones that can intervene without being asked if it is following the contractual timeline. So have you ever had anything happen like that?
I do. My mother and I did when I was in grade school. We were leaving the grocery store, coming out of coming down a hill to get to a street, and we hit ice, and there was a bus coming,
Oh,
and we should have been sideswiped by that bus, and all of a sudden we had a flat tire that stopped our car. And it's
oh, that's a good one.
like holy, like we'll still talk about today that it was just so fascinating how it was just so timely, and there's no way that we should have had
That's
a flat tire. We didn't
crazy
run
cool.
over anything. We didn't have, it didn't blow out. It was just flat.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
So mine is when I was in high school and I had a boyfriend whose dad lived way up in Hinckley, so that was a good hour from home.
Mhm.
And we would inevitably leave from our little Embers job, which was like Perkins, we'd work until God knows how many hours and hours into the wee of the night or the wee morning. And we were so exhausted. And myself and his brother, the three of us would cram in his old junky car and we'd drive up to Hinckley on the back roads. And we were always exhausted. And one time I just found myself with my hand all the way over here on the steering wheel driving the car. And I didn't even know I was doing it. We were out on some back road and we had clunked over a bridge and it brought me back into my body a little bit. And I'm like, what the heck? Because my hand is driving over here, my left hand. And both of the boys were completely asleep.
Oh my God. You could have gone up that bridge.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was
Oh my
mine
gosh.
because I was 100% aware and driving and I was not in my body at all. And I'm like, I only got in the body when I clunked through the bridge and laughed my head off, like, okay, I do believe in guardian angels.
Oh my goodness. So can we
Oh,
have more than one guardian angel?
I think we can have more guardians, but that
Okay.
technical job of a guardian angel, some people say they can have two and three, etc. But, in my opinion, if that essence is going with you again and again and again, it probably is pretty familiar and
Well,
pretty
because a
intense.
guide is different. Like if you
Yeah.
do guardian angel guide, maybe
Yep.
talk about that a little bit.
And a guardian angel is different than an angel, which is different than an archangel, etc. So really remember, we have many, many containers of the God source. The fractalization goes into any kind of embodiment, but embodiments have different jobs. So the job of a guardian angel is to guardian that one individual. We can have many guardians or guides coming in and all kinds of things. We can have guides that are animal totems. We can have guides, that are ascended masters. We can have guides that are just light beings. We can have frequencies. We can have anything and everything that are guiding us. And many people become familiar with their guides and have more of a relationship with them. So they'll feel like they're more, familiar and more intimate, etc. But that's not anything I do. I've just never been too concerned about that. but a lot of people do, and that's cool and that's great. A guardian, in terms of like a higher angelic, would be more like you've got an angelic team. You can have a lot of like a Raphael comes in, archangels come in, Michael comes in for many, many people for protection, etc. So you can do the angels, you can do the archangels, you can do all the way up the chain on the angel chain. These are all kind of lumped together, saying guides and guardians. And guardians can also come from other planetary systems. We technically are guardians for things, and we have guardians for our existence here in this universe. So we have guardians from the Andromedans, we have guardians from the Syrians, etc. So it's a really big scope, but when it comes to the guardian angel, I think that that's a pretty, in my opinion, pretty succinct thing, pretty specific thing.
Okay.
So, and you do feel it. You can feel it. Sometimes I have actually had to ask the guardian angel to actually step back a little bit from the human form because they will be so integrated into the human that they're almost like something's just something's over my shoulder all the time.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I've actually had to negotiate a couple of times to say, is it okay if you just please back out of the field a little bit because they're uncomfortable until they can get more familiar with that frequency. And that is a kind of a negotiation process that I've done a couple of times, which I thought was interesting. That's what I thought I was doing with this client. So I'm going to bring this back all the way around. And I thought, oh man, this is so weird. I've got to really back this guardian angel off. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, that's not a guardian angel. What is that? And now my brain goes into a warp speed of, is it an attachment? Does she, because we can get attachments in our auric field. Is this an attachment? Is something, jumped her? Is there something going on? Did she pick up something? And I'm going through a million different things at warp speed in my brain. And I came across the answer as I'm, working, pulling it all in. And all of a sudden I had the weirdest, oddest answer that threw me for a loop. It told me that it was actually a twin of my client that never came to fruition. And
Oh,
I have never heard anything like this before. So take what resonates here. And I'm like, what? And it said, we were supposed to be identical twins. So now we're going to go back. We've got the egg, right?
yeah.
And on an identical twin, it's the same egg, right?
Yeah, that
So we've
split.
got the same egg that splits. And the very first field that's going to come in is going to be our highest self. It starts at the crown. So our highest self comes in with the first igniting and the first everything to start the process. So what they were telling me is this went like this, and I'm going to do it over here, and it never completely split. And
Oh,
my client grew up and it had this almost like a attachment of her own twin self that never came to fruition. I
so
have,
is there
and
an essence in it?
it was only in her aura. It was only in her aura. It was not in her body. So nothing has affected my client physically.
Yeah.
Spiritually and emotionally, she's felt this connection of loss and family loss for her entire life.
Okay, so they didn't even know there was a twin because the egg never, they wouldn't have even noticed that there was
Correct.
the other
Because I
part of
said,
it.
were you a twin? And she's like, no. And I said, yeah, I actually think that you were a twin. And she's looking
It's
at
so
me like I'm a
crazy.
nut job.
But this thing that's sitting in her aura, is it this energy? Is there's no essence of that twin? There's no soul
Mm-mm.
or anything like that.
Nope. Nope.
It's what is that energy then? What is that?
It was almost just a density. And what kind of astounds me is I never found it before.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
But I was doing lineage clearing with her that day. And
Mm.
so when I'm going up through the chain and finding different things in her past lives or future lives and then her lineage line, that's when it showed itself. And again, it was just almost like a empty container, but it was density. But the memory in her experience knew in utero that something was happening, right? And I mean, she goes through all of utero and the soul comes in and the soul's like, wait, weren't we split? Were we split? Weren't we split? So my client gets this confusion of where's the other half of me? And she has always struggled her entire life. And it was the left-hand side of her, remember? Always instructed her entire life to have her female side activated.
Oh. Okay.
never self-cares, never, I shouldn't say never, has a hard time, difficult time doing self-care, putting herself first, making sure she's nourished, all those female things that that female aura does. This, sadly, she's struggled with because this was sort of hanging like baggage. Isn't it weird?
I have never heard of anything like that, especially since, so it's the memory of that was driving the loneliness and the sadness.
But there was an overlay on her field. So it wasn't an active overlay. It
But is
wasn't,
that, because you've said that, but does that stop the flow then of the energy through
yes,
that area? Oh, okay.
yes,
All right. So she never could get this going.
yeah.
It never was like flowing like it should with her energy and her fuel.
It was always a little sticky or mucky, let's put it that way. So even if she had some, it was always kind of just convoluted.
Okay.
So it was really, really stumping me for a while because I just like, what the
But
heck? And when I heard it, I'm like, wait. And then it made so much sense. And then they show me so many things in my head. And it was almost as if I was just peeling off this residue. It's like those clinger things that you put on your window for
oh
holidays.
yeah. Yeah.
And I peel that off. And I just basically peeled that off. And I remember, I don't tell her anything when I'm working at all. And she got all done and she's like, "Oh my God, I feel so completely different." Oh, and she had said earlier, I'm remembering so many pieces now. She had said earlier, "I have no joy in my
Oh,
life." And I said, a lot of people struggle with this. You do indeed have joy. These are the things you want to do to practice it, blah, blah, blah. And when she got done, she sat down in that chair and she said, "I really do feel joy now. I understand. I can have joy. There is joy." And I'm like, the old clinger. So it was such a bizarre thing because my brain went immediately to guardian angel. This is a shifting thing, and this is what's so great about being a healer because you are the you are the practitioner, but you don't lead anything. They heal themselves,
right.
and source shows you everything, and spirit and guidance, like we were talking about, who's in charge. I'm just the worker bee, right? And to be able to be participatory, to actually even hear about crazy stuff like this, much less assist, was fascinating.
Oh my gosh. That is just so I've never heard of. But then that isn't really that different. Well, okay, how is that different from from having like a hitchhiker or being, something else coming in there.
Well, first of all, this came from the beginning of time, and this person's in her
Yeah.
60s or 70s. So
Right. So
60
she's
plus
always felt this. Like,
always had
yeah,
it and
yeah.
always not connected 100%, which, we don't understand how many people aren't 100% connected to their soul. That sounds like horrifying, but it really isn't. Soul energy wise, there's a lot of mishaps.
Mhm.
And so that's different because the hitchhiker just gloms on for the moment in time when your window's open and the energy is available and they just slip in, right? So the hitchhiker, in terms of, they almost slip into the aura or piggyback on it. They don't slip. She didn't have a slip in. She had the piggyback. So in sense of the piggyback, it's a little bit the same.
Okay.
Okay. But even more so a clinger all the way through, whereas a hitchhiker just kind of slips and hangs. It's like a monkey
Okay.
on your back versus a clinger on your window.
But
But
does
it
a hitchhiker doesn't have like soul or essence either, does it?
definitely it can for sure,
Okay.
because it can
Okay.
be a ghost that's nasty and it can have all kinds of stuff going on, whereas this
Oh,
did
true.
not, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
this can the hitchhiker can change my frequency, it can change my eating habits, it can change
Mhm.
depending on how integrated the hitchhiker gets, it can give me different thought patterns, etc. But this is just kind of blank, just in the
That's
way.
just so interesting that, yeah,
It was super interesting.
yeah. Huh.
And like had I like thought that through from hearing it from somebody else, I'd be doing the same thing your face is doing, kind of like, what?
Well, I'm trying to equate it to other things that really impact your energy,
Right.
on that side. And
She's
there's nothing like,
always had no energy, also. She's always not had great energy.
yeah. Well, no
And
wonder.
just, and kind of like that whole, like, you feel like you're plodding through life, and it's just that joy factor is really low. And she's a lovely person. I love this client. She is absolutely fabulous, I believe. And
Mhm.
I'm constantly telling her, you don't even give yourself credit for how great you do. And she doesn't see any of that. So I'm so curious to follow up. This one just happened a bit ago, and I'm so curious to follow up to see what this does do. Maybe it does really bring a whole new, frequency into her life where oh, and then they really worked on her eyes too, so that she could see differently. She could see
Oh,
herself differently, which I
okay.
thought was really cool too. So.
That's very cool.
It was a really neat session. I mean, sometimes we just have to sit back and go, wow, because we have no clue of what these bodies are actually doing energetically. And when we're made privy to those kinds of stories, I'm so grateful to be able to share them with you and everybody so that we can expand our brains a little bit and really believe how beautifully strong and gigantic consciousness is,
Mhm.
and really understand it knows what it's doing, but we also want to participate with self-responsibility. If I am always sad, I do want to go get some energy help, right? I mean, I want to understand that.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Well, and your fuel, like I just think about that. I mean, coming through your aura, I mean, that's your fuel source going into your chakras. So she's never able to get
yep.
like her full fuel, to do what she needs to do.
It's like
It's just,
chugging along in a really bad old car, you
yeah,
know?
right.
And
I
it's
would
funny
be so
because
curious.
she, sorry, I didn't mean to jump. She said, now that I'm retired, I keep thinking I want to go do that. Oh, I can't wait to do that. And she said, and I just never have the energy to do any of it. I just think about it, but I don't do it. And so think of how tough that's been to have that kind of like serious monkey on your back clinging to
Yeah,
all of your energy field, because your brain still is excited to do something and your field is just like, can we just think about that tomorrow?
I know. Let's go sit in the chair.
Yes. And
Yeah,
it's been
sure.
it's been confusing for her because she thought retirement was going to be really different, and this is fairly new for her still. So this is the kind of work, auric work like that is pretty big stuff, and that timeline is really big stuff too. So I hope to hear back from her, and I'll keep you posted if
Well,
that,
it's going to change the relationships in her life, like
yeah,
potentially. There's so many, it's like a domino effect of everything in her life will be different, especially if she's looking at things differently,
yes,
if she's seeing things differently. That'll make a huge
and
difference.
still looking for love again
Mhm.
when I have this loss thing for love, and
Oh,
so
yeah.
we have an abandonment issue there that
Hmm.
isn't even real, but it is. So that's hard.
Oh my gosh. Wow. This is a cool,
Really a doozer,
cool
huh?
case. Yeah. Wow. I love learning these new things from you because it's
I
just,
know. I think that's why the unleashed part is really fun. It's like,
I love
all
it.
right, any questions, or is that kind of wrap that one up?
No, I think that it's so interesting when because we've talked about I think babies and how kind that works in utero and when things happen and
Mhm.
all of that, but to just whatever the decision was for that other one not to come in. I mean, that had to be like a decision, right? At some point, or a
Or
contract.
is it the soul that was coming in that was going to fractal at that point, and it just didn't? That's another
Oh,
thought.
that's
Yeah,
another thought.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, no, that's the end of my questions. I'm gonna call on my archangels now.
Okay.
I'm kidding.
Okay, well, on behalf of that doozy story, take what resonates as always, toss the rest. Maybe share this with a friend, family, or foe, and maybe subscribe and hit a question on the bottom so we can chat again soon.
Oh,
On
that'd
behalf
be
of us, thanks, Cosmic Hugs.
goodbye.